coming up on the Canna Cribs Podcast.
And I've known her for a long time. But when I really started to understand the stickiness and the satisfaction of not only her clients, but her people, I was like, this is the type of partner that we really, really need. And that kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah. I think that's all. I'm like working with a firm that really like understands the nuances. It doesn't get freaked out if their Instagram, account goes down. We never want to see that happen, obviously, but having somebody who like knows how to pivot and knows how to get things back in place is like, there's such a value to that. And like, very forward thinking of Madison to realize that he really wanted to have this expertise because the nuances are unbelievable.
Hey, I'm Nick, creator of Canna Cribs and Growers Network, where we have educated millions of people on how to elevate their craft. I have toured some of the largest grow operations, befriended the best growers, and built a network of the top cannabis companies. Join me on this next adventure where I document history with the pioneers shaping the global cannabis industry in real time. Welcome to the Canna Cribs Podcast. The Canna Cribs Podcast is brought to you by the top brands in the game. We have 6 categories we want to highlight to help you elevate your craft. Starting off with cultivation by Grodan, lighting by Horticulture Lighting Group, nutrients by Athena, climate control by Quest, post-harvest by greenbroz, and dispensary by Treez. Thank you to these partners for helping us create this podcast and helping us bring more knowledge to the world. If you want to support the Canna Cribs Podcast, head on over to the link in the description or go to growershouse.com and check out these industry leaders today. Hey, thanks for watching. Would you like your own Canna Cribs episode? What about $20,000 in facility upgrades? Well, my friend, you're in luck. Sign up today for the Canna Cribs and Hawthorne sweepstakes for the chance to win. The sweepstakes ends April 2023, open to U.S. residents excluding Florida and New York, and over the age of 21. You can check out the full sweepstakes rules on the application link below. I'll also post in the comments. Best of luck.
Sure. And thanks for having us today. We're really excited to be here and talk about the agencies and our history together. But yeah, from my perspective, I've actually had my own agency since 2004, and I was a solo practitioner. My background was in specialty food, and I did a little tech PR because my husband had a tech startup and it failed, as most do, but I got, I cut my teeth in tech. And then, fortuitously in 2013, my husband took a job out in Seattle, Washington, which had just gone adult use for cannabis. And cannabis had been part of my life in college, but at that point I was a mother of 3, pregnant with my 4th. So cannabis really wasn't part of my life. But I moved to this new state where cannabis is seemingly everywhere. I'd go to parties and moms would pull vape pens out of their wallets or their purses. I'd see lines at the dispensaries when I dropped my kids off at school. And around that time, I was approached in 2014 to do the launch of a crowdfunding campaign for a cookbook. It was like a platform that, people did fundraising for books, and it was a cannabis cookbook. So just because I had food and tech background, and it was a very successful campaign. And after that 6-week project, a little light bulb went off in my head that I could bring my mainstream PR background. I'd been a practitioner, solo practitioner, probably about, 10 years at that point, that I could bring my mainstream background to the space. Fast forward 8 years later, we're going to be 8 years in October. We're the largest cannabis communications firm in the space. We represent 75 companies across the supply chain, do a whole host of services, including social media, media relations, investor relations, influencer, and of course now paid media with our partnership with Madison with Mattio Fiore.
Right on. Thank you for sharing that background. And Madison, what about you? How did you get on this path of the plant?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a fan of the plant for a very long time, all the way since like end of high school, kind of passionate about the plant all the way through, and grew up in the kind of the coming of age of performance marketing. As I got out of school, Facebook ads started becoming a thing, Instagram ads, Google ads, Klaviyo, Shopify, and kind of the dawn of performance marketing. Bounced around a few different projects and got drawn to an agency called Hawk Media in 2017. At the time, I think we had 20 people. And that agency grew like crazy because, Facebook and Google and all the things that we did became such a huge need. And in that time, as we grew to 50, 100, 150, 200 people, I really wanted to focus on a vertical because kind of the master of all trades is very difficult. So I wanted to zero in on one category. And as I was looking at, kind of that lane, I saw all of this growth happening in the cannabis space. I knew that I was passionate about this plant, and I really wanted to make an impact in the way that our society, like recreationally and medicinally, consumes drugs. When I went to school, everybody was, binge drinking at a high level. I grew up in Las Vegas, where my dad was an alcoholic. His dad was an alcoholic. A lot of my friends' dads are alcoholics. A lot of my mom's friends, my mom wasn't, but a lot of my mom's friends were kind of abusing opioids. And I had a relationship with one of our friends' dads who smoked cannabis, and he was the best. He's always super nice to us, always friendly, cooking us dinner, like making jokes, just really fun to be around. And as I started to pick a lane for me, I really wanted to help bring this plant into normalcy. And I think that both as a business opportunity and as just a legacy to leave behind as you kind of look back on your career, I'm passionate about the impact that this plant can have on our society. So I picked up that lane at Hawk, kind of started working with brand after brand after brand, and the domino kind of fell over where the word kind of got out that we worked with cannabis at a high level. And I really just started to understand that in order to effectively market this plant, you have to be specialized. And to be specialized, you have to be working on it almost exclusively, understanding state regulations and advertising regulations and the difference between, CBD and all the different options out there. So I went to go start my own team in 2021, kind of putting together the business plans, ran into Rosie, and at the Benzinga conference in Times Square, we started chopping it up about kind of what she wanted to do and what I was planning on doing. And, less than a month later, we launched this joint venture and couldn't be more passionate or excited about what we're doing.
Wow. It's amazing how one person can make such a difference in your life.
Yeah.
One role model and one influencer could change the course of your life forever. So you were at Hawk Media, Madison, and at that point, you kind of were realizing you can't go halfway in. Like you got to go all into cannabis and kind of own it, right? So when you guys when you met up and decided to join forces, was there a clear divide of who was working on what? How did that happen?
Yeah, it actually happened. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just say from my perspective. So, the way we built this agency, we started just media relations, Lisa and Mattio, and then we delved into other, areas of expertise, social media. We hired the best, who could lead our social media. Same thing with influencers, somebody who had true experience. So, I'm a firm believer in you want to rely on experts. So Madison has his own lane. Yeah, we are business partners and, we share a lot of ideas, but he is the expert, and we always look for best in class experts. And that was Madison. Like it was so clear, somebody who had entrepreneurial spirit, who knew the space well, who knew the nuances, who'd done this before. And we knew we wanted to expand to this new vertical of paid. I didn't know how to do it. I needed to find the expert. So, that's really, he does have his own lane. I try to stay out of it. I'm pretty much a little bit of a control freak, but Madison does his thing.
Yeah, it's been really great to kind of get the ball rolling. Has been really easy. There hasn't been a single time where I'm like, hey, I want to do this, and she's like, well, no, we do this, because it's very clear kind of what expertise they have. And before we ever launched the joint venture of Mattio Fiore, we were pretty clear about which channels I really wanted to focus on, and that was performance growth strategy, which is more like digital marketing, paid advertising, email, and then the creative campaigns that wrap all of those up, obviously like advertising campaigns. And that fit perfectly into what she was looking for and what I was trying to build. And there's a lot of synchronicities between Mattio and Mattio Fiore and very little overlap, but we're working on, key accounts at the same time, where she's got her side and I've got my side, and they work in unison.
Could you guys give us an example of a client that might only work with Mattio or only work on Madison's side, and then maybe a client that you guys could pair together and provide the full suite, the full bevy of services?
Yeah, well, we believe like all of our clients could use Madison services, but all this stuff, it takes time to build. So Madison has a couple of clients that Mattio doesn't service, that he just does the digital for. But the nice thing is, and why this is such a great partnership, is we have a natural flow of clients that we can that we can give to Madison side of the business. So, we work collectively, I think at this point, we've only been at this around 8 months, probably close to 10 clients, or we do the media relations, we do the social, we do the influencer. And then Madison comes in and really gives this whole other side of the business. We do all earned and he does the paid. So, and it's become like an ecosystem, right? So they can do every point of communication with us. So we collaborate on at least 10 clients at this point.
Yeah. And it's been such a pleasure for me because my whole career, it's always been pretty rare to find a client that actually has good like PR and like press coverage. And all of that earned media makes our life as ad media buyers and advertisers and marketers so much easier. So it's so great to be able to jump on a call and hear all about all the earned media they got that week, or the speaking engagements, or the press releases, and the combination of it all. And then we're able to amplify that. So like, a couple accounts that we're working on currently, like Jushi's a big account that we're co-working on. Edie Parker's account that we're co-working on. Plus CBD is a big client that we're working on. And we have a handful or 2 handfuls of clients that we manage on our own as well.
Right on.
And we're hoping Madison's to bring some of those to us too. So yeah, exactly. So it's very symbiotic. So because Madison and I are both great business development people. We are relationship people and we've got a great reputation. So it helps when I say, you guys should talk to Madison. Madison says, you guys should talk to Rosie. People trust us because, we are been proven resources to them in the past.
Yep.
Yeah. Best in class experts. I was telling you a little bit before our call today that in high school, my first company was a social media agency. We'd set up an Instagram, we'd do some paid advertising. One of the most difficult things was managing that pipeline. One of your 5 or 10 clients drops out and you got to run and acquire a new client. You guys have that built in. You have that shared
Madison's
pipeline.
an expert at that too, though. He's very good at the pipeline. He's much more organized than I am. He's good on the follow-up. He's added a lot of value to my process for the past few months also.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, it seems like you guys are, building each other up, and both of your experts lend to each other very well. I'd love to dive in, Rosie, maybe some successful examples of some of the startups that came to you with kind of carte blanche and needed some help on your side of the house. Maybe you could give us some examples of, how you helped them go from 0 to 100.
Well, this is actually like the most fun part about it. Since we've been doing this for 8 years, when we started, everybody was a startup. Right. In 2013, 2014, it was everyone's like first year. I mean, there was obviously, the medical market, but some of these adult use states, we really came up with them. So we've seen a lot of companies go from startup to actually even going public. So being part of that journey has been super rewarding. I'll give a couple examples just off the top of my head. Even Spring Big, we've been with them, I think, since 2018. They started as a customer loyalty platform, which they are today. We started just doing media relations with them. We launched, their first fundraising initiative, their partnership. They're winning of awards, new hires, and then this year they went public, and we helped shepherd them to being a public company with our investor relations services. So it's been very cool to, start both the startups and then help these companies, get to their next phase of growth. Same thing with Cannabis. We were with them at day one. They were one of the first luxury cannabis companies. There wasn't really a thing called luxury cannabis then. And we helped place them in Vogue and in Oprah. So being the first and helping these companies really get themselves on the main stage has been super rewarding. I mean, I think there's countless stories, but like I said, the most rewarding part is, being part of like the growth cycle of a company and being with them along the way. We've been with some companies for 8 years. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. From startup to going public, I don't know many firms that can help bridge that gap. That's a lot. We actually went out to film Candescent.
I remember that.
Yeah. They have one of the best brands, and I love their hierarchy of kind of like the crews and the different feelings.
We did a plant-based architecture that was not like a term that like they created and we helped get out there. So that was cool. Effects-based architecture. That's what it was called.
Yeah. Super cool. Treez is the leading enterprise cloud commerce platform that streamlines retail and supply chain operations within the cannabis market. Through its innovative technology for both retailers and brands, the company provides a robust breadth and depth of software solutions required to operate a successful modern-day dispensary. Solutions include point of sale, dispensary inventory management, omni-channel sales capabilities, and multiple cashless payment options, all on a mission-critical platform that ensures regulatory compliance across every supply chain transaction. The innovative platform also connects essential brands with their retailers through a centralized brand catalog and real-time market insights. The extensible open AI platform provides smooth integration into a variety of best-of-breed solutions, including CRM, marketplace, cashless payments, and data analytics across the partner ecosystem, giving retailers everything they need to grow their business. Find out more by visiting treez.io/podcast. I'll put the link in the description below. And stay tuned for more info about Treez Open AI platform. So who are maybe some of your other clients, some brands in the space that we might be familiar with?
Yeah, so this is also the fun part about it. We work really across the supply chain. We work with some of the largest MSOs like Green Thumb, TerraSend, and Cureleaf. We work with technology platforms like FlowHub and Headset, and a lot of different ancillary services like Pathogen DX. So really across the supply chain. So that's been so we really get to flex our muscle. We do B2C, we do B2B, we do trade, and every team here has a whole universe of the supply chain. So everybody gets to learn, and we touch most parts of the industry.
Right on. And Madison, how about yourself? Who are some of those clients that you're working on today that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a lot of them are kind of cooperated alongside Mattio and Rosie's team. So like Jushi's an account that we've been working on for a while that's just been so fun because there's accounts all over the United States and there's so much going on in any given period. Like I said, plus CBD, Edie Parker. There's a handful more, but those are the ones that I got approved to chat about. So I think there's a lot of fun times ahead, but I think just going off of what Rosie just said as well, like that was one of the main things that really drove me to want to do this partnership with the Mattio team as we were kind of chatting about their performance and their experience, and the amount of accounts that they've lost in the last 8 years is literally unbelievable. Like almost nobody lets go of Mattio. And that speaks way more than anything else, right? Like Rosie's already had a great reputation. We've already worked on accounts together and I've known her for a long time. But when I really started to understand the stickiness and the satisfaction of not only her clients, but her people, I was like, this is the type of partner that we really, really need. And that kind of speaks for itself.
Right on. When a potential client comes to you, Madison, what does that process look like? Is there a discovery period? Are there, packages of services? Is it more bespoke? What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the number one thing, and it's one of the first questions I always ask, is like, what are your goals, right? Is it awareness? Is it a revenue number? Is it a customer cost per acquisition goal? Like, what are truly the goals? Because every goal is going to have a different plan. There is definitely not a one size fits all. When it comes to dispensaries, obviously local marketing is really, really important. When it comes to brands, digital marketing is much more important in building a community. When it comes to like e-commerce, we're really starting to get up to like a customer acquisition cost versus LTV. So every plan is very different, and it all works backwards from really two things. What is your goal and what is your budget? Like those are the two numbers that we need to get solidified before we start to spin up any plan. But whether it's, a specific goal and $10,000 a month spend or a specific goal and $1 million a month spend, there's a different media plan or a different marketing strategy for everything. And as we get closer to solidifying those goals, there's kind of micro key performance indicators underneath each side of the column that help us understand, okay, here's what we think we can do here. This is where we can focus on awareness. This is where we can focus on conversion. These channels are going to be best for lifetime value and extending, the cart size, all little things that you're able to, optimize and track. And luckily, they're all things that I've been doing for about a decade and in different industries, but it's very, very similar. Obviously, cannabis is the most difficult because there's so many fragmented checkout processes, but absolutely starting with goal and budget, that's where we start. And then we kind of work backwards from there.
You brought up a good point, Madison, about some of those roadblocks. So we're in a highly regulated space. What are some of those challenges and maybe platform challenges? Maybe, something on Instagram might not be as applicable on LinkedIn. If you're dealing with a lot of sales on someone's website, maybe credit card processing might come into play here. What are some of those roadblocks and solutions that you've come up with for your clients?
Yeah, I'd say the number one thing that we always have to try to identify and work through in the beginning is like conversion process, right? So whether you're B2B or direct consumer, or you're a brand that has to get filtered through a delivery service or a dispensary, or you have an e-commerce tool like Ginger, understanding like what is the conversion process like and how are we tracking those metrics is usually one of the biggest hurdles that we have to overcome in the beginning. Because in order for us to do our job effectively, we have to be tracking clicks, traffic, conversions, cart size, revenue, all those types of numbers are really, really important to understand the efficacy of what we're doing over here. So that's probably the first thing. Then we typically go into like a media mix, understanding, okay, like, can you spend on Facebook? Yes or no? Can you spend on Google? Yes or no? Can you spend on programmatic? What is your location? Because like billboards and digital billboards and pedicabs, right? All these different things have different regulations state by state. So understanding, what the goals are and then understanding what your media mix is usually second. But one thing I always like to clarify is it's not prohibited to advertise on Facebook or Google or Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok a brand, right? It is prohibited to advertise cannabis on a lot of those channels. So what we do is we build out like a sub brand. We recommend building out like a sub brand or a microsite that offers more of like a brand story, whether it's a blog or maybe a merchant site or maybe a blog and a merchandising site. And then we advertise that. So people are starting to see the logo. People are starting to get familiar with like the lifestyle brand. Then as we funnel that traffic to that site, hopefully giving them a really high incentive to submit their email, then we can send them anything we want via email, right? Email is almost unblocked. So you can say just about anything you want. So as you follow that, drive that traffic, grab that lead, and then send them to a dispensary finder or a store locator or a delivery service or a handful of other things. But it really comes down to understanding what you can do and what you can't do. And then also having the commitment to making it work, because there's a really high likelihood that you're going to get shut down on Facebook, and just accepting that that's going to be part of the process and knowing that our team is going to continue to push the puck down the ice and make sure that eventually, we'll get the account back, we'll get back up and running, we'll go through the repeal process. And that's just something that we have dialed in because it's just part of our nature.
Yeah. I'm on the content generation side, right? So creating episodes, telling the brand story. And a lot of times when I go back with their team to discuss launch, our Instagram just got shut down. It wasn't shut down before we started the conversation. And these are not small brands. Some of them have hundreds of thousands, all the way up to the Jungle Boys, over 1 million, and they're still getting shut down. They come back eventually, but I mean, what other space is this regulated?
Gaming, crypto. There's a handful of other ones that are even more regulated, believe it or not. And the bigger the account, the bigger the following, the bigger the target, right? We saw this throughout the CBD industry in like 2019 and 2020. It was just brutal. The biggest CBD companies were getting kicked off payment processors and were getting kicked off of Facebook in order to kind of show the rest of the industry like, hey, we just took down the biggest. Like if you sprout your head up high enough, you'll get chopped as well. So unfortunately, the bigger the following, the bigger the target.
Yeah. But I think this also goes back to like what Madison said earlier about having this like specialty or like having the focus. I'm like working with a firm that really like understands the nuances, that doesn't get freaked out if their Instagram, account goes down. We never want to see that happen, obviously, but having somebody who like knows how to pivot and knows how to get things back in place is like there's such a value to that. And like, very forward thinking of Madison to realize that he really wanted to have this expertise because the nuances are unbelievable.
Yeah. Have you seen a lot of these same challenges, Rosie, on your side of the table?
I mean, absolutely. When we first started, even on the earned media side of things, like when I said we were the first agency to place a story in Oprah, like I started doing this in 2014. That story ran in 2018. right? So for those first 4 years, they did not want to look at cannabis, right? Like on the advertising side, it was definitely not possible. But the editors and the publishers were just wholly uncomfortable with it. And also because it's such a regional, it's still even like a regional industry. Why would like a national magazine write about a company that is only based in Texas, whatever? Texas doesn't count because it's not really a thing. In Florida, right? Or it's medical market, like nobody can buy it, right? So there are a lot of challenges when it's just not federally legal. Or I see this as an example, like when I used to work in food PR, I worked for a popcorn company. So Self Magazine was doing a roundup of the 10 best popcorn companies. And so the editors want to try the popcorn. So what we do, we'd make a little pretty FedEx box. We'd send it in the mail. They'd open it up. They'd eat it. They'd write about it. Okay, so I have a Florida-based medical cannabis company. Self Magazine wants to review that vape cart. I can't ship it. I can't even buy it. I don't have a medical card in Florida. So how on earth am I going to get these reporters to vouch for a product that they can't even try? And a lot of the readers can't buy, even though education is so important. Now, all these magazines are writing about it all the time because it is in so many states and, the toothpaste is out of the tube, but that was a limitation. But it also was an opportunity for Mattio because, when you couldn't boost things on Instagram, right? Or like that fear of doing it or not understanding it. So one of the best mediums was earned media, right? Because you probably could share that article about your vape pen if it ran. So there were like some puts and takes to both of it.
Okay. And what would you say, Rosie, is the most successful kind of communications or marketing channel for a cannabis brand?
I mean, because of the limitations, you really need to have the entire marketing mix, right?
Okay.
Like not one thing works. So media relations is one opportunity, but like I said, there's still publications not writing about it. So I don't have the universe of 1,000 magazines to pitch. I probably have 100. So I need to lean into to influencer. I need to lean into to social. This is why we launched paid, right? Because some of these, platforms that are now taking ads, like that's the way to get eyeballs. So it is a big part of the mix. You need to have it because it's just so nuanced.
Right. So could you walk us through maybe a typical package or maybe one of your recent clients of what that mix would include? Just give it a little bit more examples for that.
Well, I'll talk about Jushi because that's a good
Perfect.
example where Madison and I both work on it. So Jushi, there's an amazing company and they actually do almost all of our services. So they do earned media, which is media relations, making sure that when they have earnings, the CEOs on CNBC or whatever it is, when they launch a new product, we're getting it placed in a lifestyle magazine, and then they do social media with us. That's everything from the brands. So like if they launch a new product, making sure that pretty, flower is on Instagram, but also that we do their corporate social media. So when they do report earnings, when their CEO does have something, we are working on like what that social media mix. Influencer too, when they launch a new product, we're getting it to people. Search engine optimization, which is one of our services, we do that too, so people can find their website. And then we just and investor relations. We work on their investor relations. That means like their deck. That means their conference call. That means their scripts. And then recently we added paid media. So Jushi, I think, does almost every single one of our services, and they are a very happy client. We love working with them because we get to flex every single part of our creative and strategic muscle. And it's a great program because it's all housed within Mattio Fiore and Mattio, the right hand talks to the left hand. Sometimes, especially in this industry, which is like so bifurcated, people are using 6 different agencies. And then like there's always a game of telephone. But because like we are this entire integrated dual agency, it's been really, really helpful.
Yeah. And Madison, on your side, what does that lineup of services for Jushi look like?
Yeah. First, I just love hearing Rosie talk about it because we look at marketing the same way. I think in the world that I grew up in, it just was so often overlooked. Like, hey, we got to spend more. Facebook optimize, Google optimize. And you just overlook how much more there is to marketing, right? Like the funnel, the brand, the product market fit, the pricing, the packaging, like all that type of stuff is so important that it's really great to just hear that, we're kind of looking at marketing the same way. But for Jushi, we're actually running programmatic display, out of home, direct mail, and a handful of other channels in the mix. So it really just understanding ways to, 1, get their message out there, 2, make sure that we're driving foot traffic to some of their top dispensaries. And then 3, making sure that those first time purchasers are sticky, right? Making people come back over and over and over again. And so working on like loyalty is something that we're looking at as well right now.
Oh, that's interesting. Is there any type of crossover to like a Spring Big or maybe one of those Mattio clients that works on loyalty and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, understanding like a marketing tech stack or a stack in general is also one of the things that we typically look at within the first 60 days, because we know that some people are just on a specific tech because they thought that was the only option. And we know all about the different options out there. So looking at those options and making recommendations is definitely part of something that we do in the beginning.
And that's one of our favorite things is being able to bring the Mattio ecosystem. We do work with a lot of these like data analytics platforms and loyalty platforms, and us being able to like form this marriage between our clients is like the most rewarding thing too, because it all stays like within the family, and we're able to get preferred rates, and it's just been a very good opportunity for our clients as well.
Let's talk a bit more about Treez dispensary solutions. First up, Treez is built on an open API platform, which provides retail dispensaries the best of breed solutions based on each dispensary's unique needs and requirements versus, let's say, a one-stop shop approach that for many retailers can be more expensive and limiting. Treez partners with leading companies across several key product lines, including cashless payments, e-commerce, loyalty, delivery, accounting, and marketing. Next up is Sell Treez, a cloud commerce platform with point of sale, inventory management, and omni-channel sales functionality, which continues to be the market-leading platform in volume of transactions in California, which is the largest cannabis market in the United States. Next, Treez Pay, the first fully integrated cannabis payment processing solution to offer 3 cashless payment options for retail dispensaries. Treez has seen a 25% average increase in monthly revenue for their customers who adopt this solution, along with a 40% increase in average order value. The proof is in the numbers. Also, Ask Treez, a data analytics platform providing retailers with real-time insights and in-depth inventory knowledge to create comprehensive, centrally managed retail management dashboards to report across their entire operation. Customers who adopted Ask Treez, a data analytics platform for real-time business and operational insights, saw an average 33% increase in monthly profit margin, according to Treez. And the fifth and final dispensary solution. Up next, the Treez platform, which is one of the first cannabis tech companies to become SOC 2 Type 1 compliant. What does that mean? Well, it validates the company's cloud infrastructure as compliant in its business policies and procedures and ensuring the security and data processing integrity of each customer's information. If you want to learn more about Treez dispensary solutions, head on over to treez.io/podcast. That's Treez with a Z, and I'll link it in the description below. Yeah, internal transfer prices of working together. It's an ecosystem. You guys have really built an ecosystem of solution providers in the broader marketing space. And Madison, getting that sticky experience of that customer coming back and buying more and more products. Right before that, how do you measure that ROI? How do you measure your marketing activity, the customer going into the dispensary, buying a Jushi product, and then attributing it back to your service or that advertisement?
Yeah, so really it's a few different processes tied into one, right? First, we're looking at like what we call a CAC or a customer acquisition cost, right? From different traffic sources, whether it's, on a billboard, we'll typically use some sort of a promo code so that when they come in, they use that promo code and we can get some attribution there. Whether it's a programmatic ad, you can actually get like click-through attribution that's connected to your POS. So we know if someone like clicked on an ad or even saw an ad, even if they didn't click on it and then converted, we can see a lot of different things that help us find like a blended customer acquisition cost or a channel by channel customer acquisition cost. Then on the back end, we can work with like their POS or their CRM to understand lifetime value of each customer. And so we can start to get to what I consider like the 2 most important metrics of building companies: customer acquisition cost versus LTV, right? Usually in like the venture capital space that I was working in for a long time, 4-to-1 is kind of the minimum. The higher you can get it, 5-to-1, 6-to-1, 8-to-1, 10-to-1. Sometimes these dispensaries have, 100-to-1 where, people didn't really cost anything to become a customer, and then they've spent thousands and thousands of dollars. So, that the value of that customer is really important. So, getting access to all of their marketing and or business tech stack and making sure that they're all communicating with each other with, tags and pixels and all that type of stuff is really important, but it also can be really strenuous. So we don't try to put too much on the client in the first, 30 to 60 days. It's, one step at a time. Okay, this week we're setting up, making sure we have the POS communicating right. This week we've got programmatic pixels set up. This week it's communicating to this. So we set up a really cool dashboard for each of our clients as well that slowly gets built out based off of what they have effectively set up, that pulls from any sort of marketing channel and oftentimes POS data and CRM data and beyond.
That's great. If you can't measure it, you can't grow it, right? We have to have some type of benchmark and all those feeding into one system to track it. What about for those clients out there, or operators out there? Maybe they don't have a budget. Maybe they're bootstrapping from the ground up, and this is a very overwhelming conversation for them, right? There are so many tools out there, so many platforms. Where should I be? How should I do it? Rosie, do you have any advice for those operators out there? Let's say a commercial cannabis grower or processor, or dispensary. Where should they start?
I mean, I'm happy to say this because, you don't necessarily need to hire a PR firm. So I think the easiest, or not the easiest, like the most cost-effective way is earned media, as media relations. So like, where is your customer, right? Let's say you're B2B, right? If you are, you have a nutrient company, right? So you might want to go to the growers. What are they reading? They're reading, maybe Marijuana Venture or Cannabis Grower or whatever it is, right? So you can very easily probably go on Twitter or Google and find the reporter that's covering your beat or like what you want to be pitching. And sometimes they prefer to hear from the business owner than an annoying publicist, actually. So if you could just do a little research and find out who's reporting it and write a thoughtful pitch saying, hey, I know that you've covered X, Y, and Z. I think you think my company is interesting for X, Y, and Z reason. We're doing this, that, and the other, and send them the pitch. It's absolutely free. Maybe you have to really like Google or Twitter is where you can find, or Instagram is where you can find a lot of these reporters' email addresses and try to go at it and then follow up and see if you can get a story placed. I mean, it can be that simple. Having the relationships and knowing how to pitch and what's an effective pitch. Yes, maybe like at some point you do need to hire a firm, but very easy to just do it yourself.
Yeah, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
That's right.
And it comes down to hustle. How hard can you get your message out there? Like how many hours can you put in each week to get that exposure? I think you nailed it. And definitely, when you get to that certain point where you have all these leads coming inbound, work with Mattio, right? Work with a PR agency that can help you just elevate that. So in the vein of bootstrapping, Madison, what would you say? What are your kind of best practices for those brands that are grassroots, just trying to get out there in your world?
Well, I would say first off, you're benefiting with a changing of the guard of content that's being consumed. If this was, 2017, 18, 19, the type of content that was performing on advertising was like highly produced, highly stylized, like beautiful shots. Now people want UGC, like the type of campaigns that are performing in advertising are either highly discounted ads, right? People love a good discount. People love a good sale, or just user generated content in general. So even if you don't have a budget for advertising, just gifting your product out and asking people to shoot a piece of content for you and post it on their Instagram story, their TikTok, their Snapchat, their Facebook, whatever kind of tool that they use, that is probably what I would spend my time doing if the budget is really tight and I had to get some momentum going. That's probably the place I would start. And then we take that content at the next level, like our highest spending clients. We are talking about user generated content on a weekly basis. Hey, what do we have this week? What's new this week? What's new this week? If there isn't anything new for weeks on weeks, we're like, hey, we need UGC. How do we prioritize this? Because that's what's working.
Yeah. You're building like an army of true fans. You're getting your top 100 customers. Just talk about it. I love that idea. And it's in this day and age with our phones, right? Anyone can open up Instagram for free, shoot a video, tag the account, and drive that micro traffic, but as a whole, you're combining 100 people doing that. That's a lot. That could be just as much as one big, on Rosie's side, one big magazine or YouTube channel or something like that, right? You're adding those up. So Madison, as far as kind of measuring the success of account versus different accounts, let's say Facebook, Instagram, TikTok's on the rise, YouTube, and a handful of other, Snapchat. What have you found the most success on a singular platform if you could choose one?
Well, I would definitely have to understand like the product market fit of the brand and the product, because we work, with CBD, we work with dispensaries, we work with delivery services, we work with brands. So I'd have to understand a little bit more. I'd say like, obviously anything Gen Z related would be, if I could have it on TikTok. TikTok's really picky about cannabis. You'll notice the French word like "we." If you look up like weed, OUID on TikTok, it's like a sneaky weed hashtag that's actually happening right now. It's kind of funny because
like
they
Treez
block
on
cannabis. Yeah. They block cannabis, they block weed, they block everything. So if it was like Gen Z and a young demographic, I'd go TikTok, kind of millennial age, obviously Instagram, older people, Facebook. And then we're talking like dispensaries. It's actually local marketing. So things like Yelp, things like Foursquare, things like Google Maps. If we can get like a high ranking on there, that's where you have a really good opportunity to succeed.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, for locals or just people traveling in, tourists just, hey, what's the best dispensary on Yelp? Like they might not find it on social, but they're there in person. They're looking for something close. That makes complete sense.
And obviously like those channels are not all currently running for our clients. Some of them are for some of them, but those are like, that would be a if I could have it my way type scenario.
Yeah. So the inevitable, we kind of scratched on it before, but your account gets shut down. It's not the end of the world. We'll get it back. But what does that process look like? Is there a support form or something that we could just link in this description that people fill out?
Yep. That's exactly it. And obviously, we typically go through our Facebook agency rep, but most people have to just, submit a form online and wait for that to come back. And Rosie, I think, has to deal with that as well through our social media team.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty common. Yeah. I see accounts getting shut down all the time, including ours. And it's, I don't know, for individual companies, maybe it's easier for an agency, but individual companies, it kind of seems like you just submit something out into the wind and the support will eventually get to you and, help you get your account back.
Yeah, it can be hard. And that's why a lot of people like do end up working with us. Just we have these relationships and we can't abuse them. If somebody does something that, is against the guidelines, it's harder for us to get to put back up. And a lot of these are just shut down arbitrarily. So if we can appeal to the right people, we have been able to get some accounts brought back. But it's very challenging if people spend like so much time trying to build these communities and putting the content. And it's devastating, when you try to build this platform, it gets shut down. But it's just, the industry in which we live. But I also say somebody once told me, actually very interesting. It's an interesting idea. It's Mary Pryor from Canna Cribs, a client of ours and a good friend. She's like super smart. So we always, we bemoan, oh no, we cannot advertise on Instagram and Facebook like our, sneaker counterparts can. But she made a very interesting point. The day that cannabis companies can advertise freely is the day that Unilever also can advertise their cannabis brand, right? Because that means there's like a whole federal legalization probably happens, right? Or something where some sort of regulation happens. So right now, at least we're on even playing fields. We're all getting shut down. We're all on these small cannabis budgets. But when we have our cannabis budgets, we're going up against Unilevers and the, and the Diageos of the world. It's not going to be as easy for us when we're contending with those dollars. So it's a little bit of, we're in a time where being creative and being scrappy and understanding, there's a lot of value to, what Madison is doing and how cannabis companies are innovating.
Yeah. What is your stance, Rosie, on just the overall kind of censorship when it comes to cannabis as a whole? Do you think we are making progress since when you entered the industry? Or are we kind of sitting in a similar spot, just waiting for the federal level to lift?
Yes and no. It's definitely a mix. Like I said in the beginning, like none of the mainstream publications were writing about it, like at least the lifestyle, and now they are. So that's part of it. But there's also still such the stigma is still there. Even just recently, the New York Times did a story about cannabis beverages, but are they safe? And it was very one-sided, and normally I would have loved to have a New York Times place, and one of our clients was in it just as an example, and it was a negative story. Was like is people don't know what 200 milligrams is versus 5 milligrams. And like Can had a very interesting like clapback being like, it's just math. 200 is more than 5, right? So like there's just still so much education, and a lot of like the media just like they're not necessarily doing the work to understand like the nuances or understand like what regulation is or like what some of like the standards are. So we still have like a lot of work to do. And I do think, the media platforms are punitive. Like I get served alcohol ads all the time. Yes, we rosé or whatever it is. Yeah, I get that all the time. I get so I mean, why should something that gives me a hangover be able to target it to me, but a plant can't? So we have made progress where like more people are covering it, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And it's a very interesting time, to be a marketer in the space.
Yeah. Well, I think it starts with the marketers, right? Like we are collectively shaping and influencing what's out in the media. And sometimes that media can influence the politics. If enough people, raise their hand up and say, hey, we need to change this. Do you see the end, kind of ending the stigma or the failed war on drugs? Do you see that in the near future?
I mean, absolutely. Like we are making progress year over year. Absolutely. And also like, I think a lot of like the work that, the PR agencies and the companies that have done in terms of like educating media has been helping, or even on, you mentioned on the policy side of things, a lot of the work we do is trying to get stories out, not necessarily in front of consumers, but in front of regulators, right? Like why cannabis has been good for a community, the tax dollars, the jobs, right? There's like that part. And I think media can really help influence that. And the ones that are covering it really thoughtfully and that are covering what's happening in Washington, I think they are helping move the needle forward. And the more people are talking about it, the more interest there is, the more they're getting into the communities and local level. Like if your local mayor is talking to the media saying, hey, like my town needs cannabis, we need the tax dollars, like that's the thing. So I do think we're making progress. I do think, as things move forward in Washington, things will open up for us more. But, we're all collectively working together to get the story out that cannabis is pretty much, a good thing. And most Americans are voting in favor of it. Hopefully Washington can catch up.
Yeah. Madison, in your opinion, what are your thoughts on kind of legalization and our collective efforts in helping to get us there?
Yeah, I think as like a marketer and a business owner in this space, it can feel like we're not making the progress that we really are. It's from the consumer side where you can really see a lot of the progress, right? Accessibility, legalization, product, form factors, pricing, like all of those things. To be a consumer in cannabis right now is a pretty cool thing. You walk into just about any single dispensary and you're going to have, discounts, you're going to have like samples, you're going to have so many things thrown your way. And I think it's the responsibility of, conscious consumers to help spread that on to the next person, right? Like my mom was having a hard time sleeping. I found a few different cannabis products that were specifically formulated for sleep. A week later, she's like thanking me, being like, oh my gosh, this is like one of the best things that's ever happened to me. Thank you so much. And, that continues to happen, right? One of my friends is kind of having a hard time at work right now and having a hard time winding down and was trying to turn to alcohol. And he was talking about how that just cascades on the next thing and the next day where you're hungover. And I was like, hey, like, here's a little wild gummy, have half of it the first time towards the end of the day. Just tell me how you feel. Saw him a week later. He's like, oh my gosh, I can't even tell you. I feel like a weight was lifted. So I think from the consumer side, legalization is happening state by state. Medical states are going recreational. Recreational is getting more and more dispensaries. Competition driving pricing down. So from the consumer side, you can't be more happy with what you're seeing. New York's about to go legal, but absolutely, from the business standpoint, there's definitely a little bit of frustration because competition is just brewing and brewing and brewing, and pricing and legislation and taxes and all this, random nonsense about not being able to write off your marketing expenses and all the little things that make this business so hard. is also, to Rosie's point, what's giving you an opportunity to compete and get out ahead of what's going to happen with Procter and Gamble and Unilever and these big corporations that are going to jump into cannabis without a doubt in the next decade. So this is your chance to get out ahead of them and build a company that they're going to want to buy. So I think, there's a lot of good things to look at. I know it can be frustrating, but I always try to focus on the positive, and there's a lot of positives to look at.
Some of those companies you mentioned are probably even here already. Maybe they didn't go through the PR route of making it public for strategic advantages. But when that day comes, when the kind of private or even publicly traded, but, David versus Goliath, when that day comes with the Unilevers and the big companies, how do we compete?
I mean, there will be a whole sweep of, of acquisitions where these companies that are, their own companies today will be part of Unilever, right? But I do think that there will be, there is that learning curve. I mean, yes, you're right. We know that some of these big companies have their little labs and they're figuring out what their play is going to be. They're thinking about it. But, and we saw this, in sports gaming and in other industries or tech, you can build or buy. And I think there's going to be a lot of buying.
Yeah. So when we get to that other side, and the dust has somewhat settled, there's been a stabilization in the market. How does a independent cannabis company compete? I mean,
it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be really hard.
Difficult.
If you think it's hard now, it's hard then. But that being said, there are a lot of things that are going to be accessible to cannabis companies, which are not now. If the publicly traded companies are in the space, that means there's banking available. So there's a lot of there's huge companies like Salesforce, and there's companies in the tech industry that are popping up today, that are be able to go to real private equity or real venture capital, which, just the numbers are not the same in this space. So yes, there's gonna be larger competition, but there's a lot of opportunity to get a small business loan, which nobody can do right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think there's also those niches, right? So I think about the supplement industry, right? You go back to 2012, 2015, protein, creatine, pre-workout supplements, just as popular then as they are now. The difference is right now there are brands that sell those products for $8 or $9 that people buy. And then there's people that, lab tested, high quality, organic ingredients, sourced in the United States and beyond that are $80, $90. And there's consumers for each side. So I think as the cannabis consumer becomes a little bit more educated and really knows what they want, they're going to be willing to pay extra for, small farms, organic, even though that word is a little taboo, locally sourced, all the different form factors that people are going to be specifically looking for. And so where you see most of the time, a Procter and Gamble or a Unilever or beyond, they will typically go for the low price, right? A good enough quality for the lowest price. That's usually the lane that they go. But that doesn't mean that the luxury or the higher priced or the super clean products don't have a chance to perform. And that's where I think smaller companies or privately held companies have a place to go. But Rosie's absolutely right. There's going to be a massive amount of acquisition when that day comes. And I think, a lot of people are looking forward to that day, including myself.
Does the industry today still have room for new entrepreneurs? Can we still start new companies today? It's not over.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And hopefully these new entrepreneurs can learn from all of our mistakes. There is. I mean, listen, this is a 2022. There is so much innovation. There's so much technology. People come from different industries can bring their expertise here. It's, we are still a federally illegal industry. There is so much room for growth. We are really only in the first inning. So yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you agree. So what does the future of cross-border kind of sales look like? Because there's this argument, right, where individual states have that tax base and maybe they don't want to have, their product being shipped in and would rather have it in their state and consumers to go to them. Do you agree with that? Or do you see all the borders kind of going down and just kind of free for all?
I mean, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the states do want to keep the taxes, right? But I think for there's puts and takes to both of it, right? Like to be able to have hubs, right? Have, three, like Coca-Cola doesn't have a facility in every single state, right? They've got like 4 hubs throughout the country. So for like big cannabis companies, that might make sense, right? That being said, so there could be some lobbying against that. That being said, there also could be something nice about, having those moats around your state. So I think there's different perspectives. But like if we think about this as, look, 15, 20 years, 30 years down the road, like nobody does business like this really where it's so state by state specific. I can't imagine stays like this forever, right? Even like in, maybe the gaming is, but like there are these like, brands that are global, like an MGM. So I think down, 20, 30 down the road, we won't be seeing it all being state by state. But for now, people want to keep their tax dollars.
Do you agree with that, Madison, on your side?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but I would say that it's going to be very unlikely that, Montana, New Mexico, and all these states that have massive like climate differences are going to be able to grow the same quality cannabis that states like California are. Typically you're getting a lot of wine from Napa Valley, you get your champagne from France, you get your tequila from Mexico. Like, I think it'll be like that, but I haven't kept up to date as much on that side of the business.
Right.
Yeah, but I think Madison is right? And that is the thing. Like why a lot of these, California brands, you're seeing them pop up on the East Coast, right? Because, LA, California is like land of the brand, right? That's where things are, a lot of that, that style, that edginess, comes from the California scene. But it's being popped up in New York with like a different SOP, right? It's not the same product. It's being grown in New York. So can you build a brand that way? Do people want to build a brand where you just can't necessarily control consistency? So I think that probably overall, the cannabis industry does want this federal legalization just so they can, have, this real brand building, like SOP. But, we'll see where we land. Right now, we're dealing with many of these companies are doing well despite having these limitations.
Yeah. Well, you guys are both best in class. You have a wonderful partnership in Mattio Fiore. What can we expect to see from the future from your company, your combined efforts?
I mean, I think we are both hopeful that, some of these clients that we share right now that do all of the services will continue. Like we really want this to be an ecosystem. We want to be the one-stop shop for the cannabis industry. So we're going to continue to grow along with our clients. Like right now, they need what we have for them now, but we're constantly thinking what's next. And we're working with our clients to figure out, what's next and how we can help them do it. We become a trusted resource. So we just want to continue to be, good partners to our clients and grow alongside with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for us, just being the most innovative cannabis advertising agency is what I'm hyper focused on. Obviously, that's how I contribute to being the best in class full stack marketing agency out there between Mattio and Mattio Fiore. So my focus right now is being able to set up the best practices across any sort of vertical, whether it's dispensary, whether it's delivery service, whether it is brand, whether it's CBD product, whether it's B2B. So building out those strategies, testing new campaigns and advertising channels, setting up tracking, and really truly being the very best option is what I spend, 60 hours a week doing right now. And hopefully time over time, we'll be able to grow and scale each of these accounts and kind of solidify ourselves as the best in class.
Well, thank you both for joining me today. This is our first multi-guest pod, and I think it went very well. I appreciate your guys' feedback and insight into your businesses. I'll link the websites in the description below, so for anyone listening that wants to hire the Mattio Fiore team, it's one click away.
Thanks, Nick.
Hey, thanks for watching. Would you like your own Canna Cribs episode? What about $20,000 in facility upgrades? Well, my friend, you're in luck. Sign up today for the Canna Cribs and Hawthorne sweepstakes for the chance to win. The sweepstakes ends April 2023, open to U.S. residents excluding Florida and New York and over the age of 21. You can check out the full sweepstakes rules on the application link below. I'll also post in the comments. Best of luck. Hey, thanks for tuning in today on the Canna Cribs Podcast. Brought to you by the top brands in the game. We have 6 categories we want to highlight to help you elevate your craft. Starting off with cultivation by Grodan, lighting by Horticulture Lighting Group, nutrients by Athena, climate control by Quest, post-harvest by greenbroz, and dispensary by Treez. Thank you to these partners for helping us create this podcast and helping us bring more knowledge to your garden. If you want to support the Canna Cribs podcast, head on over to the link in the description or go to growershouse.com and check out these industry leaders today. And while you're there, hit us up on Instagram. Hit us up on the Growers Network forum. We have thousands of growers all around the world on both our Instagram and our forum, just like you, looking to elevate their craft. Happy growing.